Hello. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. It's really fun to be here. And I want to thank the folks at City Lights for having me back again. It's always really fun to do stuff here. So I'll start just with a story. This is a story about me going to work one day. I work here at UC Berkeley in a building called McCone Hall. That's where the geography department is. That's where the earth sciences department is. And it's kind of a funny thing because it's named after a guy named John McCone. And John McCone, it turns out, was a CIA director in the early 1960s. And I really like the idea of a kind of social sciences department being in a building named after a CIA director. Kind of reminds you that knowledge is not necessarily neutral, right? No. But I was going to work one morning, and it was a weekend, so it was really weren't a lot of people around. Good time to go and get some work done without people bothering you. And I look down the hall to where my office is, and I see that there's somebody standing outside my office, and he's looking very intently at something outside my door. And outside my door, I have a photograph in a kind of a plastic sheath. It's a photograph. It's a satellite photograph of an air base, and I could tell that he was looking at it as I watched him down the hall, and at some point he started actually picking it out of the plastic holder that it was in. And at that point I thought, okay, this is time for an intervention. So I run up to the guy and say, you know, who the heck do you think you are? You can't steal my photograph. What's going on? And the guy said, oh, I'm really sorry. I wasn't going to steal your photograph. I was looking at it, and it's really interesting. I've never seen such a good photograph of this place. And he said to me, do you know what this place is? And I said, yeah, I know what that place is. Do you know what that place is? He said, yeah, I know what this place is. And we went back and forth for a little while, and he finally said, you know, I'm here. I'm a pilot. I'm here. I'm going to a conference this morning here. Had to stop and use the restroom. But I used to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force. And when I was in the Air Force, we would have big war games out in Nevada called Red Flag. And the idea was all the fighter pilots from around the world would come to Nevada, and they had a huge piece of restricted airspace called the Nellis Range, where they could do all these war games, kind of like the Air Force version of Top Gun or something like that. But within that airspace, he said, you know, this is a big place, about the size of Switzerland, big, lots and lots of airspace. And Nevada's a huge place, big desert. And he said, but inside this restricted military space, there was this other space that everybody called the box. And the deal with the box was that you weren't allowed to fly into that box under any circumstances. So even if you were going to run out of gas and you needed some place to land, you were supposed to eject from your airplane rather than land at the airstrip in the box. And he went on to say for a while that actually one of his buddies, a guy in his squadron, exactly that situation happened. They were flying, doing war games, fighting each other. The guy was going to run out of gas and had to make a decision. Okay, do I land in this airstrip in the place I know I'm not supposed to go into, or do I eject and blow up this airplane? It's very dangerous to do. It costs a huge amount of money. And he said, you know, screw it. I'm going to go land in the box. He landed. All the other fighter pilots went home for the day. And the guy didn't show up. And the next day, the guy doesn't come back. Next day, another day goes by. The guy doesn't come back. It takes about a week. And then finally, their friend shows back up at the Air Force base, and everybody says, what happened to you? You know, you flew into the box. Everybody knows that's a big no-no. You don't do that. What happened? And the guy wouldn't say anything. And then we were talking for a while, and this pilot said, you know, that place in this photograph, that's part of the black world. And that's the phrase he used. And I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about this world with the secret world within an already somewhat restricted world. To try to come to terms with what he meant by that, I think a good place to look is the defense budget. And the defense budget, it turns out in the United States, is a public document. Right? You can go to the Department of Defense website and you can download the entire defense budget. It's really remarkable, actually. And the reason you can do that is because of this document right here, the United States Constitution. And there's a section of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, has a bunch of different things in there. One of which says you can't repeal habeas corpus. Well, okay. But there's another one here, which is something called the Receipts and Expenditures Clause. And it says, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. What this means is that Congress has to tell you, they have to show you the receipts of all of your money that they spend. Right? So you as a taxpayer have the right to see the receipts of how Congress spent your money. And that is why you can download the defense budget. When you download the defense budget, it looks like this. This is what a typical section would look like. This is a line item for $12.3 million. And they have to justify what they want to use this $12.3 million for. The justification for this one says this money provides unit and field service equipment to enhance soldier efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability. Items include laundries, latrines, and showers, which directly affect combat readiness and sustain combat power by promoting wellness and preventing disease. So this is the budget for toilets. And we need these toilets. There's $12.3 million for toilets because we need to promote wellness and prevent disease and enhance combat power by doing that somehow. So the language here is quite colorful, but I think this is what the founders had in mind. This is the idea. Yeah, you got to tell people how you're spending their money. Now, there's a different part of the defense budget. This is a part called Research, Development, Test, and Evaluation. And when you open up this part, it looks a little bit different. Inside this part of the defense budget, you'll find some rather strange names. You'll find something called Pilot Fish with a budget of $132.1 million. No explanation of what Pilot Fish is. Retract Larch, $89.6 million. Retract Juniper. And it goes on like this. Chalk Coral, Retract Maple. Retract Maple by $346.1 million. Link Plumiera. Retract Elm. Link Evergreen. Then we find something else. We find line items where it says special activities. And there's a blank spot in the ledger right by there. No number at all. Selected activities. Again, we find another blank spot in the ledger. Advanced geospatial intelligence, foreign counterintelligence, combined advanced applications, human, classified programs, special program. These are all line items with no budget numbers next to them. There are entire agencies whose budget looks like a giant blank spot in the ledger. This is the budget for the National Security Agency. We have one line item for $394.2 million. But again, that's just one line item. The rest of it is blanked out. We don't know what these other numbers are. This is the budget for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. This is the Pentagon's Geography Department. Again, no numbers at all. A big blank spot in the ledger. Now, there's a funny thing you can do with this defense budget that you've downloaded. If you're a little bit obsessive compulsive, you can actually go through every single line item and add them all up, and you get a number. Now what you can do is you can take your number and you compare it to the published total at the end of the whole thing, and you'll find that these are rather different numbers. There's a discrepancy there of about $30 billion. And in your afternoon where you had too much coffee and did this, you've done a very, very simple and basic calculation of what something called the black budget might look like. And this is a very, very conservative estimate of what that would be. You've basically found the blank spots in the ledger and have come up with a vague outline of what might be in there.